Epic longevity. Carnivores seem to unlock an ancient secret to extraordinary lifespan. I got to thank Dr. Chaffee for introducing me to our good friend Maggie, who we went and filmed for the
Yeah.
documentary. She's a prime example of this. But so I know like Maggie's putting the proper fuel in her body for 60 plus years now, so she's not getting ill or sickness. So for that reason, but what other science or what is behind living longer? I've heard you talk about this a little bit more in detail before, so I wanted to dig into it a little bit.
Well, I mean, it simply comes down to, if you're eating what you're designed to eat, you should live out the normal course of your lifespan unless something poisons you or kills you or shortens your life in some other way. So if you are eating outside of that, that could potentially not provide the essential nutrients that you need or enough of them, and could obviously be harmful to you, which is the entire reason that I stopped eating plants, and that everyone else should stop eating plants if they care about their health or, really want to optimize their health, because these things do have toxins. They have things that are objectively harmful to you, even just carbohydrates. They fundamentally rearrange and change your entire metabolism biochemistry. That is a massive, massive, massive detriment. It's a massive change. So, you're really, really hurting your body by putting this stuff in your body. As Dr. Gary Fettke says, you have about 4 grams of carbohydrates in your body. Even going up 1 gram up to 5 grams is a toxic load of glucose, and your body responds to it as a toxin by trying to detoxify it by raising your insulin. And it's so important to get that below 4 grams that it raises insulin, which completely rearranges your entire metabolic structure and causes all these problems down the road as well. So it's vitally important to keep that below that toxic load. And when people have diabetes, this basically decompensated ability to lower the blood sugar, they start getting above that 4 gram mark, and that starts killing them. And this is why diabetics start needing foot amputations. They start losing their kidneys. They develop heart disease and Alzheimer's and all sorts of other sorts of illnesses, and then they die, right? It's very, very serious. Just 1 gram, 1 extra gram of glucose. And this does all this damage to your body. And so you can do things that damage yourself. And eating carbohydrates is one of them, but it's not the only one. Plants make over, around 1 million different defense chemicals to stop and deter animals from eating them. So you're putting these things in your body and you're just harming yourself. It's plain and simple. And so we look at this from a genetic perspective. We know as geneticists that based on the length of our telomeres, we should live on average of 120 years. That's what I was taught in genetics. And I've seen this multiple times since then. And so the telomeres are sort of like a molecule sort of chain on the end of your chromosomes. And we sort of look at this and they just sort of start popping off. And when they run out, that's it for that cell line, and it sort of dies off. Now you can do things to lengthen your telomeres and shorten the telomeres and all these sorts of things. That's why these anti-aging doctors and scientists and researchers such as David Sinclair, they're trying to do things. Oh, this lengthens your telomeres. Interestingly enough, cancers have capped telomeres, so they never run out of telomeres, and that's where they can just propagate and go and go and go. So do lobsters. So lobsters, Jordan Peterson's favorite animal, they have just capped telomeres, and so they can just really go and go and go, basically live indefinitely unless they're killed by something. And so that was always what I thought when I was a kid, was just, if you're looking for the fountain of youth, why don't you figure out how to cap our telomeres and see what happens there? Probably we're going to get a whole bunch of weird cancers that you don't want, but it's a thought. And based on our telomeres, we should be living about 120 years. Okay, so why are we dying in our 60s and 70s? Why is the average life expectancy from birth in most developed countries in the 70s? And that's 50 years early. That's 40, 50 years early. So something's harming us. Something's killing us slowly but surely, and building up over time. This is, people smoke. Depending on how heavy they smoke, they reduce their life expectancy by, say 20 years if you're a heavy smoker. Why is that? Are you just perfectly healthy and then one day you just drop dead? No, you're damaging yourself, and you're building up a massive body of inflammation and toxic exposure, and you're getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker until you can't keep on going anymore. So if you don't do that and you eliminate all these sorts of things, you should just make it longer. We should be making it to 120. What does it mean to, on average, have average life expectancy, or genetically we should have a life expectancy of 120 years? That means that if you just stay out of your own way and don't mess up and don't get killed by something and don't poison yourself, that you should make it to 120 without doing anything special, not listening to any of the gurus, not taking metformin or all the different sorts of, anti-aging drugs and these sorts of things that Dr. Sinclair does. Just being alive, just doing your normal human thing. If you are actually doing your normal human thing, you should make it to 120 years without doing anything special. And yet we're dying 50 years earlier than that. And we're calling that a good life. Saying someone who dies in there at 82, wow, they had a really good life. Oh, 90, wow, that's amazing. 100, that's amazing. They died 20 years early, or 30 years early, or 40 years early, right? So that's in respect to everyone else living, they had a good time. But in proportion of what we're supposed to live, what we're designed to live, we're dying young. So something is killing us, right? And so I think you have a lot of ground to make up before you ever start looking at the metformin or the rapamycin or all that sort of stuff. You just eat a normal human diet, and you're going to live a normal human lifespan. And maybe all those things will make you live to be 150. Maybe, I don't know. But the thing is that you already get about another 40, 50 years just by eating a proper diet, and you'll be much healthier the whole time, because that's the whole thing. You die early because your health is damaged and degraded, and it builds up over the years and the decades, just like with smoking, just like with drinking, just like with any toxic exposure, and eventually it just kills you. You don't do that, you're not going to get this buildup of toxic exposure, and you're just going to age much more gracefully, and you're not going to have all the problems that they experience elsewhere. How do we know this? What is the evidence out for this? No one's ever lived that long. Yes, they have. So the Native Americans, again, back in the 1800s, there's account after account after account after account that they were living 110, 115, 120, even 130, 137 years in Chief John Smith White Wolf. And of course, we don't have an official government, ID for them and a birth certificate and things like that. These are their own accounts, and they're talking about these things, but it's consistent. And throughout, everywhere you go, they're just like, yeah, that person's 108 and this, that, and the other, and they're doing fine. They're like, really? Yeah, how is that possible? They're just saying that. Well, they may just be saying that, but they're just happening to lie and say that they live the exact life expectancy to the exact age range that we would expect people to live if they were living naturally and just living out to their genetic potential. So it's very, very strange that, it's not like, they're talking about like being like, Methuselah and things like that. So, I'm 982. Like, okay, yeah, that's fine. They're not. They're saying 110, 130, 120, right? That's right in that range that we know as geneticists you're supposed to live. So that's very normal. They should be living that long. And so we should be living that long as well. So Chief John Smith White Wolf, you can see many accounts. There's no hard evidence one way or the other. It's his word against other people who just don't believe it, right? So you see a number of different blogs, and he said this, and his family said this, and his people said this. And he died in the 1920s, and he actually has described on multiple occasions his experiences fighting in the War of 1812 as an adult. Right. So that's 110 years before he was born, before he died. He's talking about and he's describing what happened in the War of 1812 from his own personal perspective. So, there is some credibility there. And, the same people that believe the blue zone lies, are the same people going, nah, that's not true. That couldn't possibly be. This was people's own accounts and their own, self-reporting in the blue zones, saying that they lived a long time. And so it's exactly the same amount of evidence that Chief John Smith White Wolf and his people provided, right? Which is just their own accounts. So if you accept the blue zone data, if you accept the blue zone things saying that these are vegetarians, they live longer than everyone else, which they are not vegetarian, and actually they don't necessarily live all that much longer. Then you have to accept the Native Americans in North America them self-reporting this, and the native Australians saying this, and the ancient Ethiopians in Herodotus who were reported to live 120 years or more. There was a meeting between Persia and Ethiopia and the Ethiopian king, and they started talking. The Ethiopian king asked the Persian delegate, say, what do your people eat and how long do your people normally live? And the Persians, explained growing wheat and making bread from this. And they said, well, we would live normally, about 70 years, kind of similar to us. And the Ethiopian king said, well, no wonder you live such short lives if all you eat is dirt. Because we only eat boiled meat and we only drink the milk of our cattle besides water. And we would live 120 years, sometimes much longer. And there that number is again, 120. And so he could have been lying. He could have just been trying to, show a big face to the Persians. And yet he he randomly picked the exact age that we should live to on average. So you see this again and again and again and again in these carnivorous populations. We're seeing people like Maggie, who's been carnivorous most of her life, certainly in her adult life. When she moved out, she's like, definitely not eating another stupid vegetable again. But even before that, she was like me and so many other people who just hated vegetables, really didn't want to eat them. And she just had kinder parents than most of us because they didn't force her to eat her vegetables. They said, look, she's skinny, she's healthy, let's just let her do what she wants. And so, and she's 82. I mean, I'm sure you notice as well, she does not move like an 82-year-old. She's like hopping over fences and just climbing up. I saw her climb up a mast of a little dinghy sailboat that they have, fast as hell. Just grab the line, pull it down. Like, this is someone's great grandmother. This is like it's pretty incredible. And so yeah, if you eat what you're supposed to eat, your body's going to work the way it's supposed to work, and you're going to live as long as you're designed to live. And we are designed to live at least 120 years, if not longer.
Yeah, on the Maggie front, we could talk about Maggie all day. I can't wait to share some of the footage we got in the documentary from her. One of the other things she did, Dr. Chaffee, that was incredible, she got feed, and like a big 5-gallon bucket. She had 4 of those completely filled to the top and was carrying 4, I don't even know if I could, 4 5-gallon buckets full of feed walking. And yeah, when I interviewed her for our documentary, Healing Humanity, I said to her, I was having trouble keeping up by like day 5. Like she's just nonstop all day working on a farm. It's a lot of work. I said, Maggie, when are you going to slow down? And she looked in the camera and she said, Carrie, I'm just getting started. And it isn't a joke or she's like showing off or anything. I believe it. She said to me, I also asked her, like, how long do you think you're going to live to? And she said 120 easily. And I think she'll go beyond that even at the rate she's going now. It's just incredible. I just want to say one other thing too. You talk a lot about the plant toxins. And I'm totally on board with all that. I did a video the other day about how I'm never eating plants again my entire life. The plant toxins are one thing that I'm totally on board with, but then it's like, I went down this rabbit hole with all of the pesticides and the Roundup and all of those things on it. I saw this video, I got to find it, where they juiced a piece of fruit and then they analyzed it. It was still full of pesticides. I've always thought that in my head. It was so stupid. Like when I used to eat vegetables and fruit, you take it and you'd sprinkle it underwater in your sink. Like, oh, that's really going to get all the poison that's inside the piece of fruit out. No, it's still in there. We're just telling ourselves, oh, I'm sure it's fine, while we're literally slowly poisoning ourselves. And I just saw this, I just saw the study that came out. They were talking about if the pesticides and the Roundup weren't bad enough, and the Roundup, they're talking about how it can break the blood-brain barrier, causes leaky gut. It's like everywhere. On top of it, now they're saying that most pesticides have the forever chemicals in it that stay in your body forever. I'm like, I don't need any more reasons. Like the plant toxins was kind of enough, but then when you really think about all those other things, and what I used to eat, Dr. Chaffee, it would have been like, oh, I'm going to eat a salad. What is in a salad? Like 14 calories. It probably, my body probably took more energy just to process that than I'm getting out of the 14 calories. And then on top of it, my body's like, what the hell is this? There's pesticides in here. There's toxins in here. There's Roundup in here. Just craziness. Humans. Well,
I was just going to say that was actual diet back in the 80s and 90s. It's called the Celery Diet, because they actually calculated out that your body would actually expend more calories to process the celery and then get rid of the filthy thing than you would actually get from the celery. So they said, it's like, oh, you just eat the celery. Just eat as much celery as you want. I mean, people are just, they're really not thinking about this rationally, because like there are not sufficient nutrients in celery. This is not like a mono food that we can just eat like a steak where you just get everything you need. There's not hardly anything favorable in celery, and there's a lot of things that are harmful. But even if we were just looking at this from a nutritional standpoint, you could not just eat celery all the time. You get horribly nutritionally deficient, and you get very sick and even die. So it's just sort of silly when they do that. And it's just all about calories. No, it's about nutrients. Your body tracks nutrients, not calories. And this is why that sort of the high fiber diet for losing weight was very, misguided in the first place, because you actually have sensors in your stomach. The idea is that you ate a whole bunch of fiber and it stretched out your stomach, and those stretch receptors released leptin. And if they were not stretched, they would release ghrelin. Your brain's, oh, we're empty. We need something in here. Stretch it out, leptin. Okay, we're fine. Problem is, the majority of your leptin is actually created from your fat cells. Not all that much come from your stretch receptors, but there is some. But the thing is that that's not what your body's looking for. It's not just saying, how much leptin do I have? That's when I stop eating. There are receptors in your stomach that actually look at macro and micronutrients, and that tracks up to the brain, and your brain knows what's in there. So you could eat a whole bag full of styrofoam and just stretch out your stomach, but that's, your brain's going to know there's no nutrients in there. And that's the same thing that happens when we eat a bunch of vegetables with fiber in it. This is why people going on those high fiber diets, high fiber, low nutrient diets, did not really lose weight. They did not get rid of their hunger cravings. They felt bloated and gross and sick, and they were still hungry and having cravings. So it really is just not a good idea.
Right. So if you want to live to 120, like Dr. Chaffee said, just get the hell out of the way.
Mm.
Just eat the food you're supposed to eat. It's so funny. You've talked about this before. It's like humans are the only ones with our big brains. We just screw it up so much. Just eat what we're supposed to eat. And the thing too is, it's not just living to 120. Right now, for the last 300 days I've been doing carnivore, it's been the best I've felt my entire life. So you're like really living versus what I was doing before. I was walking around in a brain fog and fatigue all the time, and stomach gurgling and bubbling, and actually really living. All right, here's another one.